Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stephen. I'm a traditionally published fantasy author. Today I'm going to do a kind of a rambly video. And actually, do I even need to say this intro at this point? If you're watching this video, you probably know who I am. Maybe got an inkling. I don't know. I didn't do a video last week on camera because I wasn't very well. I will be doing some Q&A on traditional publishing stuff later on in this video. So if you're not interested in the personal stuff, you can skip to that. But anyway, so I had the virus that we're not supposed to talk about or name, apparently. I had been dodging it for 2 years and it finally caught up with me. So my voice is probably a little bit hoarse. That's why, and I didn't want to do a video on camera last week. So I still did the one on James Barclay, which I wanted to do anyway. So go back and watch that. And I like doing those videos. And I think I'm probably going to do a few more of them, because there are a lot of great authors out there that people should be reading and maybe they just don't know about. So I think it's worth me doing them. Actually James reached out to me and said he'd seen the video. And he's got a new book coming out in June, I think it is. There's links in the notes on the video so you can check that out and check out his work. It's definitely worth looking at. I think one of the problems is when there's so many books coming out all the time in every genre, but in particular with, fantasy and science fiction, anything over like 10 years starts to feel as if it might be outdated or maybe it's not worth reading, and it's not true. There are some older classic books that are just not really up to standard. So I've got gaps in my science fiction and reading history, and I've gone back and read things like Fahrenheit 451 and Stranger in a Strange Land and Slaughterhouse-5, and some of them are really good and they stand up today and they're just as good now as they were back then, and some of them you read them and you go, yeah, I can see what they were doing. It was very much of that moment and it was probably quite groundbreaking, but it doesn't really have the same kind of feel compared to 2022. But there are some good fantasy books out there, so I'm going to do some more of them anyway. Cat hair. Anyway, I should say I did actually post news about the change in videos, because on the community tab I post questions there, I post notes, I post comments, information about events and other things. So I'm going to a couple of events in the UK because of my books in Manchester, and then later for the Chimera Festival in Edinburgh, and I put stuff in the community tab there. So if you're interested in what's going on outside of the videos and stuff I'm up to, you can check it out there. So that's worth having a look. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the special editions. Now, for those who are eagle-eyed and have been paying attention, and a couple commented and got quite worried because behind me is a copy of The Coward and then The Warrior. But don't worry, yes, they're different size. No, when they actually come out, they will be the right size. The reason it's a different size is that it's an advanced reading copy. So this is just an unfinished proof for me to have on my shelf, and it looks pretty cool, but it's not the final version. But we are doing some special editions. So The Broken Binding are an independent publisher and bookseller in the UK, and they specialise in doing signed and special editions of science fiction and fantasy books. And the brothers Gwynne on their channel, I'll put a link here so you can go and watch it, did a full reveal showing what the new special editions will be of The Coward and The Warrior. These are hardback editions and they look absolutely amazing. We're doing 500 of the kind of normal ones that are all going to be numbered and signed, so that's a day for me. And they're also going to be doing 52 specials in a slipcase. And just look at these. They're absolutely amazing. The designer who did the original covers, Kieran Tyler, she also did the specials here. And as you can see, they're just amazing. They're so good. So sales for them starts later this month in May, and I will post a link and notes about that in the community tab and also on my social media. So if you're not following me on there, have a look on Instagram or Twitter. Twitter's probably best. I probably post on there most often. So the next bit of news I wanted to talk about is another open submission window. So if you're interested in traditional publishing and you're a science fiction or fantasy writer, then this is the right section for you. I previously spoke about Angry Robot, who also had an open submission window. That's now closed. It was open for sort of 1 month, and you could send your book in directly to them without needing to have a literary agent. And as I've said in other videos, most of the main publishers from the big five you cannot contact them direct. You have to go through a literary agent. However, Gollancz are having an open submission window later this year. This is for the entirety of June, and I've got some of the sort of specs. So from June 1st right up to the end of June at sort of midnight, they're giving you the full month to submit your book during that period to them. I'll put a link so you can get the full information, but a rough idea of what they're actually wanting from you is a complete and full manuscript. You have to have finished your book. You cannot send them anything half done. And they've got an email address, which I'll put a link to, and they've said you send your book to them, just as a Word document, but also include 1,000-word synopsis in the body of the email, including what genre your story falls within. And that's kind of it. You send it in, and then you have to kind of wait. Now, it will be a while. It will take them a while, because as you can imagine, they're probably going to get a couple of thousand submissions, I would guess, maybe even more. And I think they've been conservative when they've said it could take anywhere up to 9 months. It might be longer, but who knows? It really depends how fast they manage to get through those submissions. But this is a good opportunity, because if you don't have an agent, it can take a while to get one of those. So if you have a book and you think it's ready, give it another edit, give it another polish, work on that synopsis, and then send it in. So just a quick reminder, because I got some more people joining my Discord during the Angry Robot submission. I run a Patreon, and part of that is basically a private writing community where me and other writers post material, synopsis, covering letters, chapters, and we all provide feedback. So if you don't have a community that you're a part of already and you're thinking of submitting, you could join for a month. We'll give you some feedback on your synopsis, maybe some comments on your book, and then send it in and see what you think. So check it out if you want to. So now I'll go on to the Q&A section. A few people have sent me some questions. I do a monthly roundup of a bunch of questions anyway. I'm saving some of those for the end of this month, but these are just some other ones that people have sent to me that I thought was worth talking about, really. Tom had asked a general question. He sort of said, how do you find time for reading, writing, and a full-time job with other commitments? And I've talked about this a little bit in other videos, but I think it's revisiting, particularly because of something I'm doing, and I've asked a couple of other people in the Discord if they want to do it this month. So finding time to write a book is tricky. Having writing targets, daily word counts, write every day, all this kind of stuff is really, really confusing, and it can be quite a challenge to write a book and fit it in around everything else. And I know NaNoWriMo is very popular. I understand the good things about it. The community, it gives people a target, it gives them a focus for a month and gives them something to do. But I don't actually think it's a good idea in the long term, or that it's sustainable. So what I'm doing this month, and I've asked other people if they want to join in, is to do 20k in May, 20,000 words on your book within the month. Now, if you do nano, from what I understand, the target is to do as much as possible. Some people do 50, 60, 80,000 words and they're just ramming out this brand new book, something that they've never done before and they haven't written anything. And it sounds really exciting and it sounds really good, but as I said, you can't keep that pace up. But if you did 20,000 words a month, you've got a book in 6 months or less. Or even if you can't manage that, even if you can do 10,000 words every month. Now that's not writing 1,000 words every day, it's not writing 1,000 words every session, it's just if you can sit down and do 500 words, you've got an hour on a Sunday somehow, so your plans have changed, something was cancelled, you've got a bit of time, sit down and just do a bit of writing. And don't worry about, I have to get to that 500 mark and then I've got to do this. Look, do a couple of hundred, do what you can, and just, if you can, try and get to like 10,000 for the month. And that's not a huge amount. And there again, in 12 months, you've got a book. Now I know some people say, well, I can write a book faster, I should be able to do that, and if I crank it out and the rest of it, yes, you can. But for sustainability, it's not feasible. And if you think about traditional publishing, it's actually quite a slow business. And that's something I'm going to do on a later question, I'm just going to talk about in a minute. A book typically comes out every year from some authors, not all of them and not every genre. But if you're putting out a book a year, you're expected to write a book a year. And if you can do it in 10 months, then that's really, really good. So trying to cram it into a shorter period over a long-term career, you can't sustain that, especially if you're fitting it around work and family and other commitments. So Tom and anybody else, all I would say is take a bit of time out from something else that you normally do, another hobby, another pastime, and just don't do that thing for an hour 1 week and do a bit of writing. See how you get on. Some people do the kind of, I get up an hour earlier or I stay up an hour later and try and do it that way. And if you can, that's great. But there again, that can impinge upon everything else in your life. The other thing I'd say is, even if you want to be a writer who makes it up as you go along and you don't want to plan your book in great detail, if this is the first book you've ever written, then I would suggest doing some planning, just because you need to have some kind of a roadmap in place. And writing is like anything else. It's a skill that you get better at with practice and over time. So trying to write a full novel by the seat of your pants when you've never done it before, you'll probably run out of steam. You'll probably get bored. You'll probably get annoyed and just give up like the 20, 30, 40,000 mark. And it happens to people all the time. So put a plan in place, some notes, some kind of a framework so you know what you're working towards, because life can get in the way and maybe you just don't write for a whole month because stuff comes up and you just don't have time. When you come back, you've still got that plan. You still know, oh yeah, that's what I was going to do next, and you can crack on and just move forward. And maybe 10,000 words a month is possible. But a book a year, yeah, that's doable. So another question that was sent in is, what do you know now about publishing that you wish you'd known prior? And also things that have surprised you about the world of traditional publishing. So this goes back to what I was just saying, is that the business is really quite slow. Now, there are a lot of really good reasons for this. Self-publishing is much faster. You can turn out a book from when you hand it in to your editor and it can be on the shelves in 2 months, 3 months, maybe even less if you want. And traditional publishing is just so much slower because it's a much bigger machine. Now, if the publisher is quite small and they have a small list of authors, then they might be able to turn them around much faster. But publishers are always working like 12 months in advance. They have their list of authors, but they're also acquiring new people all of the time. And they've only got a certain number of limited resources in terms of the staff within the building, freelancers that they hire for proofing, maybe copy editing. Designers could be in-house or they could be external people they hire. And they're limited by budget and the number of hours in the day. So traditional publishing can seem very slow once you get into the process. But from the outside, it seems even slower because you get a book a year, and some people are saying, well, why can't you have one faster? Because it means you'd have to they'd have to sacrifice something else. So if they've got 100 clients, say, on the list, and they're trying to get 2 out by the same author in 1 year, then someone's going to get bumped off the list and pushed to the back of the queue, which isn't really fair when they're trying to promote all of them and do fair by all of their authors. So there's this great kind of juggling process throughout the traditional publishing cycle, and I've experienced this ever since I began with my first debut book. I'll be working on one book, I hand that in, and then it goes into kind of the editing cycle, and I start working on the next one, because so far what I've written so far have been series. So I'm writing book 2, and then at some point a few months into that, the notes will come back, the edits on book 1. So now I have to kind of pause, do the edits, send that back, carry on with book 2. A few months later, maybe the proof comes, and then at some point I hand in book 2. Maybe book 1 has just come out, and now I'm working on book 3. So there's this constant kind of time traveling in your brain where you're looking at the past of what you've just done, you're working on something in the present, you're planning what the next book might be in the series, or you're scribbling down notes, and it's this constant kind of churn of ideas that you have to come up with, because if you write one book and then you don't put anything out for 5 years, as I've said, the audience can drift away and can kind of forget about it. If you don't put a book out for 10 years, they'd be like, do I really want to read a book from someone who hasn't done anything for 10 years? Is it even going to be interesting to me now? It's very, very difficult, and keeping your name out there is really, really important. Reminds the fans that you're there, you build up a body of work. This is what it's all about. The next question was things that have surprised me the most about the world of publishing. And this was something I didn't really understand until I got into it, is that it's actually a lot smaller than you think. Now, to begin with, I write fantasy novels, and there are a limited number of agents who will accept that genre, and in turn, there are a limited number of publishers who will accept it as well. And let's say there are 20, just for the sake of argument. That means there's only a certain number of editors who work within that genre, and a certain number of copywriters and all this sort of thing, and cover designers and stuff. And everyone knows each other, is the kind of thing I'm getting at. That even if they're at a different publisher, someone will know, the editors know each other, agents from different agencies who work in the same genre or different genres, they know each other. Obviously authors, if we're in the same space, we're attending events, we're mixing, I do signings with other people, I get to know various people, some with my publisher, many who are not, and it's actually a lot smaller than you think, it's quite nice in a lot of ways, because writing by its very nature is very solitary business. I'm doing it all by myself in a room to begin with. Yes, once later on you get edits and you work with people, but it's all done remotely. I don't sit in a room with my editor and she kind of says, oh, how about this and how about that? And we work on stuff together. It's still me staring at a screen working on stuff. And I might have phone calls with my agent, I might have phone calls with my editor, and we talk things through, but it's still a very solitary kind of space. So going to events, meeting other authors, being able to talk to them about the same kind of struggles and issues and surprises that, oh, when I was working my debut, my editor did this, or she asked me that, and someone else says, yeah, I got that, I wasn't expecting that, or how did it work with the cover with you? Oh, well, I spoke to so-and-so. And it's great being able to kind of have these stories and compare notes and find out things. And every time I do one of these author interviews on the channel, you've probably seen, and if you hadn't, go and watch them, I kind of have an hour before and after with all of the authors talking about the stuff, talking about the business, and especially during the last 2 years where there haven't been in-person events, these talks have been absolutely critical for me. I'm able to kind of connect with people that normally I would see in person, and we'd sit in the bar and have a beer and have a chat behind closed doors and can talk about things freely and comfortably that you can't kind of say on social media because it's part of the private business of publishing. And that's just been an absolute joy. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I've made some good friends and some good colleagues, I guess I could say, since I've been published. And for those who are looking to get into the business, it's also worth remembering that it's very small once you're actually in there. Because even now I see people, mostly agents, posting things on social media where they've had a submission, they've read it and they've rejected it, only for the person to then turn round and tell them they don't know what they're talking about, they haven't got a clue, they're obviously biased, they've obviously got an agenda. And there isn't, but I like to imagine there's like a blackboard somewhere with just a list of names on, that they're like, yeah, that person's on the blacklist, they're not coming in the business. And it's not to that degree, but if you go and send something to one agent and they reject you, and you absolutely blast them and tell them they don't know their business, word will get round, you will become known, and what a surprise, you get rejected again. What are the odds of that? Because no one wants to work with an awful person. Normally in any job, you join a business, you have no choice whatsoever. You sat in an office, hello, you meet the people around you, you can't decide. This time, they can decide, and why would they want an awful client? Why would they want someone who's just terrible to work with? So, yeah, just remember, it's a lot smaller than you think. Apologies for a slightly ramblier video today. I'm still not quite 100%. I'm getting there. My voice is still a little bit off. But I'm going to keep doing one video a week as planned on a Tuesday. That's what I'm going to stick to for the time being. So I'll be back next week with another video.